As many of you know, being a hobbyist woodworker does not pay the bills. So I have a normal job. I am a media teacher. This is my classroom. This is something I built for my media production course this year because I was fortunate enough to design my own classroom. And one of the things we needed was a big middle console that the students could use as a desk, a little studio desk, but also so that we can nest the two together and we can have meetings at that desk. I assume most of you aren't gonna want to build a media desk. You probably don't need that for your life, but you might be sitting there saying like, man, I really could use a new office desk. I could use something new for my kids' room, but I'm just intimidated to build it. So instead of doing a full build where I walk you through each step of this, I'm gonna walk you through 6 really underrated tips that I think will make building this a lot less nerve-wracking, and you'll understand that you can handle this no problem. And this isn't a tip, but the first thing you should get are some friends who can help you haul all of the sheets of plywood that you might need. Now, once you get the plywood brought in, one of the best things you can have is just some spare sticks lying around to kind of offset the plywood when you put it on the ground, because you're going to want to cut that up and break it down. And the best way to break it down is with a track saw. Get yourself a track saw. If you don't have one, borrow one from a friend, find one. But unless you have a huge shop with one of those great table saws and sleds, a track saw is really helpful to break down those big sheets. And I don't even love this Craig one, but it works just fine. Tip number 2 is label every piece as you go. It's just like IKEA. If you get those instructions and they're really clear, it makes the build process easy. Speaking of easy, embrace pocket screws. There's a lot of debate out there in the woodworking world that for some reason pocket screws are not seen as good enough. Look, they are just fine. I've built plenty of things. It holds stuff together really well and it's super convenient. The key thing is just hide it. Don't show them. Make sure you can cover them up. I'm gonna paint this project, so pocket screws are great. Something else that's really great: if you don't understand how to use spacers, spacers with cabinet builds are a huge savior because you don't have to measure everything. And when you measure everything, there's more potential for risk. And so when you use the spacer, not only can you measure the bottom, but then when you measure the top, you ensure squareness. So it is really a must go to if you're building cabinets, because it's gonna save you from getting really frustrated that your boxes are out of square. And sometimes it'll fall to the ground, but that's not a big deal because, again, it's just kind of pinched there. And I know there's someone out in the comments who's saying, wait a minute, you're attaching this with brad nails? Are you insane? Everything gets backed up with screws. That is just to do the initial hold. I only have me when I'm doing this build, so I'm trying to make sure I can get those tacked together as nicely as possible before adding screws for further strength, as you see here. Speaking of really convenient things, I use an edge trim router just to clean up the size of any kind of backer board or top board. If you haven't used one before, it's a really slick trick that you can just barely oversize the board and cut it down to final dimensions. The next tip's going to be kind of obvious for some people, but install your casters before you install your tops or anything like that. Not only does that give you the really easy and convenient ability to move around your very heavy bases, but you'll also not risk damaging the top by potentially flipping it over and having to install those casters, or just be on the ground and try to install them, which is a huge pain. The whole base is made out of plywood, and so you're gonna have some ugly edges. You can either embrace those edges, or if you're painting it, you can fill it with spackle. One of the nice things is it also dries really fast, so your working time is sped up a little bit. And as you see, it goes on pretty fast. And there you go. So I leave you with those 6 quick tips for building any kind of big desk or console. And hopefully these give you a little bit more courage to try it yourself. Good luck.